Broken characters. Terrifying in real life, but fascinating in fiction. Broken characters are an interesting concept. They present the idea of moral corruption in a linear and digestible way. Alongside this, these types of characters often have far more nuance and complexity due to the fact that they don't have to be the perfected ideals of humanity. So, what comes to mind when someone asks you to think of a broken character? Not a character that's poorly written, but one that's lost everything about themselves and remains as only a shadow of who they once were. Alternatively, their breaking point may have further brought to life their identity and personality, although this doesn't always have to be a corruption arc because it can be used for triumph as well. So without further ado, it's time to delve into the plot. I had always struggled with writing compelling tragedy beyond simply giving a character a tragic backstory. While this will, of course, change the character and influence their decisions, it won't have any real impact on the story unless something very specific happens that can genuinely trample the life out of something a character believes in or values. Though the pieces were there, the execution is the most vital piece in storytelling. Before going any further, I should note that there will be spoilers for Arcane, Bungou Stray Dogs, NieR Automata, Persona 5 Royal, and Fire Emblem Three Houses. Now, I'd like to elaborate that breaking down a character's beliefs can be used for both triumph and tragedy. The key differences are how it happens and what the character does once they reach this point. You cannot have change without first letting go of what is hindering that change in the first place. In something like Persona 5, nearly every arc involves a character learning the flaws of a previous mentality and then overcoming those flaws to allow them to grow as a character in a positive way. An example of this would be Makoto's arc, where she initially only does what adults tell her to do, which leads her to being, as Akechi puts it,
"So you're just the good girl type of pushover."
Alongside this, her inability to make her own decisions led her to feel useless to those around her, which they definitely don't let you forget.
You're useless. Useless? Right now, you're useless to me.
The resolution of her arc has her finally deciding to cut her own path, but she couldn't have gotten there without at least partially needing to lose the desperate need for validation of those above her. She was broken down as the other characters were so that she could become a better person. This is the classic hero arc, so what happens when this is used to utterly destroy a character? Well, have you ever watched Arcane? Yeah, if you are on the internet at all during 2021, you probably know where I'm going with this. But there are a few other examples I'd like to go over first, and then break down what exactly is going on here. Bungou Stray Dogs is an anime that's plot is largely incoherent, but remains entertaining through its intriguing characters and the mystery behind certain backstories. One of these characters is one that's essentially the definition of broken, which is Dazai Osamu. At the beginning of Season 2, the first 4 episodes are a mini-arc of his days in the Port Mafia. This is by far the most well-structured arc in the series, and applying a 5-act structure to it, it would essentially go. Introduction. Oda is a pacifist mafia member who refuses to kill. Development. Dazai, Oda, and Ango are friends that work for the mafia. Oda watches over orphans, and he wants to someday write a book. He was once told that he should never be in charge of another character's life if he kills people. Dazai, for anyone who doesn't know, essentially only wants to die. That trait doesn't really change. Ignition. The orphans are killed, and Oda surrenders his previous morals and ambitions when he swears to kill the leader of the group that killed the kids. Dazai says that he initially joined the mafia in the hopes that he would find a reason to live. Resolution. Oda and the leader kill each other, and Dazai finds Oda in his last few moments. Oda says that Dazai will never find a will to live, but to live on the side that saves people, so that his life will be more beautiful. Consequence. Dazai leaves the mafia and joins the armed detective agency. This arc is tragic for numerous reasons. Firstly, because of Oda's death and unfulfilled ambitions. He wasn't allowed a happy ending. But while Oda was the protagonist of this arc, the story was truly about Dazai and the effect that it had on him. Normally, you would expect the final words in this type of scenario to be something along the lines of, "Don't waste your life, you'll find your reason someday." But Oda chose to relay a more cynical sentiment with a silver lining. In this one scene, Dazai loses both his only true friend and any reason to keep searching for a reason to live. So, back to breaking a character, this is how you do it in a tragedy, though not one that results in a negative character arc. The only person that came to a conclusion that they wanted to was the antagonist. Oda never got to escape the mafia and write his book, Dazai never got to find a reason for his life, and Ango left so that he could make some cameo appearances later, I guess. Alike to Makoto, the author brought forth the things that most plagued the character's mind. For Makoto, it was her insecurities about her usefulness, and for Dazai, it was whether or not he would ever find a will to live. Now, let's look at an example of this being done poorly. For the sake of fairness, I'll keep the examples from the same stories as before. In Persona 5 and Persona 5 Royal, the general least favorite main character is Morgana, the talking monster cat, who first told the main characters Joker and Ryuji about the metaverse and how to steal a person's heart. During what's known as the worst Arcane Palace in the entire game, Morgana's inferiority cat complex gets the better of him and he runs away from the rest of the Phantom Thieves, the main characters. An argument against this in the Royal version is that they had made Morgana more sympathetic, which made it seem less reasonable that he would suddenly be way more of a jerk because Ryuji finally retaliated a bit after having been constantly roasted by Morgana throughout the game. There could have been good characterization here, but there wasn't enough of a build-up to warrant this response from Morgana. It was set up in a far subtler way and over a longer period of time than the other characters, but the tipping point just wasn't quite there. The idea of being useless to the team is honestly more compelling here than it was for Makoto, but they didn't emphasize how it's supposedly more of an insecurity than the idea that he might not be human. While the character had so much potential, his breaking point just wasn't quite there. Going back to Bungo Stray Dogs, Oda didn't give up on his dream until the orphans were killed. The thing that had been keeping Oda tethered to sanity and morality was the fact that he didn't kill anymore, but you know that he's reached the point of no return once he goes after the crime boss. Using points of no return, while this is an obvious point, is perfect at letting the audience know that this character will never and can never turn back to the morality or dream that they once valued. Oda is a great example of this because there, the point of no return is used by way of if he kills even one person of his own volition, the years of pacifism will be forfeit. Before I go further, I think that it's important to differentiate the point of no return from an action that a character just can't undo. They should essentially be the same, but as far as characters go, there's a bit of a difference. Essentially, the point of no return is an action that a character takes that specifically targets their core moral values, identity, aspirations, etc., and makes it so that they have rendered themselves unable to achieve their prior dreams or positive ending, at least when it's used for tragedy. This is where I'll be saying mega spoilers for NieR Automata and Arcane, so skip to this time to get past the spoilery segment. Arcane is a tragedy about a girl named Powder who accidentally kills her adopted family and joins the antagonist, who becomes a sort of twisted father to her. This is where she first adopts the name Jinx. The first season comes to a final climax when Jinx has kidnapped her sister Vi and adopted father Silco, and now must choose between her two identities, Powder and Jinx, each name being written on chairs that sit on opposing sides of the table. This scene can go one of two ways, though by this point you essentially know which identity Jinx will choose. Although, there's still a sliver of hope for her as long as she doesn't go past the point of no return that she's been nearing for the entire third act. Powder is alive only until she sits in the chair that says Jinx. Alongside this, she still has something tying her to any semblance of morality as long as Silco and Vi are alive. Silco wants her to be Jinx, and Vi wants her to be Powder. During this conflict and overwhelm, Jinx instinctively protects Vi and accidentally kills Silco, making it the second time that she's killed her adoptive father figure. Because this solidifies the reason that she initially became Jinx in the first place, she really can't go back to being Powder, so she sits in the chair that says Jinx and proceeds to essentially nuke the Capitol building of Piltover. This severs all hopes for her to be redeemed and for peace to be made. This climax and resolution are so perfect because it shows the themes of the storyline and unquestionably solidifies the answer to the identity conflict that had been going on throughout the season. So how does this differ from something that a character simply can't undo? In NieR Automata, the main protagonists are all androids with the mission of eradicating machines that inhabit Earth so that humans can return from their refuge on the moon. The main thing that you need to know about these characters is that 2B is the main one that you play through the main game through, 9S is kind of a simp for 2B and deeply cares about her, and A2 is a rogue who definitely won't come back later for a more vital role in the plot, but anyway. In the third playthrough of the game, the story finally progresses past the initial arc and onto one where all of the androids become infected with a deadly virus. By this point, A2 was just there for one battle to establish that she had gone rogue, because
Command is the one that betrayed you.
And she doesn't really reappear until this new segment of the game. Not too long into this new storyline, 2B becomes infected with the virus and asks A2 to kill her. After this happens, 9S only sees that A2 killed 2B, and he becomes just a little bit murdery because of it. But this act of killing 2B is what I mean by a non-undoable action that isn't part of a point of no return. It's a good tipping point for 9S and suitably shattered all of my emotions, but it's not a breaking point for A2. Now, if 9S had killed 2B, that would have been a point of no return, because he would have willingly destroyed the person that he cares about the most. Though for A2, there wasn't any pre-established emotional or moral connection between the two androids, so A2 didn't lose anything within herself by committing this act. So after that unbearably long detour, I should admit that you don't actually need a point of no return in order to break a character. Rather, it's just one of the many tools that you can use in order to portray that a character is past their tipping point. And it doesn't have to be this sudden grand event. In fact, you shouldn't solely rely on one scene for this. It can be a festering insecurity that builds up for a while before shattering. It can be something that your character knew was coming but failed at dealing with. It can be almost anything so long as it hits whatever the character either cares about the most or feels the most insecure about, or both if you want to be evil about it. My favorite example of this, and one that you'll be hearing quite a lot of if I end up doing more of this video analysis thing, is Dimitri from Fire Emblem Three Houses, the best game since Xenoblade Chronicles 2, a totally popular game that everybody definitely doesn't hate, trust me on this. The best part about this character's breaking point is that by all accounts you should see it coming, but it's just so hard to see this princely boy turn into this feral madman. The most fascinating part about his arc is that there are two breaking points before he goes off the deep end. The first is in his backstory, as he's the sole survivor of his family and friends being massacred. You know, normal main character stuff. And the second was halfway through the game when he finds out that his stepsister is a little bit antagonisty, so he does the logical thing and slaughters several men with his bare hands and tries to decapitate his sister. As you do? The first time I played this game, the scene was so jarring, but not because it was unexpected. Felix straight up tells you that Dimitri's like this back at the beginning of the game, but Felix is an angsty lancer, so he's probably just exaggerating. Right? Well, unlike with 9S or Powder, we actually get to see glimpses of Dimitri's more unhinged side throughout the beginning half of the game, which I feel is something that Persona 5 actually lacked in regards to a certain character, but that's a video for another time. The main part about his arc is that it was doomed to happen regardless of what he did, and especially with the spin-off prequel-sequel that is Fire Emblem Three Hopes, you can see that even if he never truly snapped, he would have still had some issues, just more hidden from those around him. And this is the core of why breaking your characters on such a psychological level can do so much for their characterization. The actual break, the tipping point, or the fact that it's just always threatening to snap the character's mind, is what creates such interesting dynamics. And until you bring your character's issues to light, they'll never be able to face and overcome them. The most important thing to keep in mind, though, is don't be scared of truly hurting your characters if tragedy and corruption are what you're going for. Take your character's emotions and sanity and hit them with a sledgehammer. Even if you're not writing a super dark story, the conflict still needs to have some relation to the character's weakness, the part of their mind and heart that they don't want to show the world. Without drawing that out, there won't be an arc, therefore there won't be growth. You can be gentler about this, or you can shatter your character's will to live. Either way. There's no right way to write a story. It's all down to the execution. Bringing it all together, breaking a character is a delicate thing, and there are a lot of ways to mess it up if the core structure of it is poor. But the simplest way of putting it is, for tragedy, give your character a person, value, hope, etc. that they care about above all else, and then utterly destroy it before their eyes. For a positive arc, have your character recognize the flaw or flaws that are holding them back and force them to face and overcome those weaknesses. Happy writing, everyone, and good luck to your unfortunate characters. Bye!